Live.
Hello.
Hi, team.
Hey, Shar.
Hi,
Hi,
Sumit.
John.
Hi, Wendy. Hi, Sam. Hi, John.
Yeah.
Hi, Shar. Hi, everyone.
Yes.
Hello, everyone.
It's definitely good. I mean, and I appreciate everybody covering since I was gone for the past week on vacation. So thank you. So, but I did listen in. I was actually climbing in Chamonix, and we were just doing this little rock wall that was in a local town there because my son brought his girlfriend, and she's never rock climbed before, and so we took her to this little rock wall, and I was listening into the forum at that location. It was great. Went well.
So I could just envision you hanging on a wall, listening to the forum.
Well, it wasn't
Right.
that extreme. It was more like,
Not quite free solo, right, Sam?
Yeah, that was some free solo with my iPhone. Yeah, and that's another thing. I don't know if I'm sure that guy is taking his phone on those climbs, and it's got to be just to take that picture every once in a while, because he's like the rest of us, I'm sure. But man, dropping your phone from one of those high perches. I wonder how many phones he's gone through. That's my question. I'd like to have for him.
Yeah, see if he's sponsored by Apple, maybe, so that he's always got a phone ready to go when he needs it.
No kidding.
Yeah. So John, we are definitely the nomads. We all travel everywhere. So
I love that. I'm the
Sumit
same
is
way
in,
as much as I can.
Yeah, Sumit's actually in India.
Ah, beautiful, Sumit.
Yeah.
So
Not quite if you look at the temperature out there.
It's
always
pretty hot
too-
in India, huh?
yes,
Sorry about that.
Sumit, is that clock behind you accurate time there?
Twice a day, yes, it is.
Twice a day. You're funny.
Yeah, and Wendy is she's moving towards being a dive master, right, Wendy?
I got my dive master.
Oh, you
Yes.
did.
Good
Hey,
job, Wendy.
congratulations.
Congrats.
And I got 100 dives, which you have to have in order to start your scuba instructor certification. So that's what I'm going to be doing next this fall. So
Beautiful.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Working
And that
towards
was
100
really,
dives.
yeah, no, I got it. No, I got it. So
Huh?
yeah, you can't start the instructor course without that. So that was an accomplishment in of itself.
Will you have a
when-
primary location, Wendy?
I have no idea. This is just one of those things where a lot of universal nudges, things came together, and I just said yes to some great opportunities. But I have some contacts in Cozumel, Mexico, which is where I'm doing my training. And so I have a feeling I'll be diving there.
Wonderful.
So yeah, maybe training here in the US and then going there for the dives or something like that. So
Yeah, very good. Exciting.
That's great.
and that I had to fill in. I had this big gap in my life because I'm a dance instructor and I haven't been dancing because of the pandemic for 2.5 years. But all that just opened up. Events that were scheduled for me for June or July 2020 got canceled, rescheduled, and finally just happened in July 2022. So it's very exciting. All these things are coming back online.
Yes, better
So-
late than never, right?
Lots of testing, but our week we had 150 people all together, eating together, dancing together all week for 8 days, and nobody got sick. So we're just so grateful for that. So yeah, pretty interesting to see how to make these events work in in the times that we have.
Yeah, forcing people to pivot and really get creative in terms of laying out some of these things that used to be second nature, right? You think about dancing and you think, okay, people would be together for that. And then having to force ourselves to look in a different way or keep an open mind and see through a different perspective.
Yeah.
That's right.
And doing things that are really uncomfortable. I can tell you that dancing in outdoors, no AC with a mask on, all day, all night, and having to talk through that mask as an instructor for so many hours. I mean, it was definitely hard, but everybody was willing to do it at the camp in order to keep everybody safe. And so that was an interesting experience for me. to be. Yeah.
Interesting is one word for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely uncomfortable being in hot and speaking through a mask all day. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, but kudos to you. I know that that the different viruses are kicking up and going around right now. I mean, I hear a lot of people are getting sick in the U.S. and strange things are, but hopefully everybody will stay safe going forward. But,
Yes.
perfect. Well, I know we're about 1 minute to get started, and we have some of our listeners come in. So welcome, Daniel. Good to see you, or see your name on the screen. And Connie and so forth. So it's great to see everybody start joining up. Perfect. And we'll get started in just 1 minute. We're just having a chat as we're waiting for the top of the hour, and then we'll get kick things off.
And I have to say, this is so fun for me because I met John. I was trying to think back when I met you, probably around 2015, 14 or 15.
Yeah, my guess was
And
14 or 15 in Durango,
yeah.
Colorado.
Yeah. And also we've in Denver and Cincinnati, and we've kind of met up in all different places. But so that we're finally doing our first, podcast together is pretty exciting. I know we probably never thought about that when we met many years ago. So it's really
certainly
fun.
Wasn't on my radar back in 2014. I wasn't doing a ton of podcasting. I wasn't listening to a ton of podcasts. So exciting to see how things come full circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
All right.
That's great. Well, go ahead and get going.
Yes, we are. We are approaching the top of the hour. So let's get the live stream going, and we will hit it. Perfect.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us again. If you haven't had a chance, we are the People Strategy Forum, and this is the place where we engage, energize, and elevate your employees and your company. So we've been going strong for a few years now, and we are so excited to have you here. This is where we gather experts in people strategy, all types of different people strategy leaders and consultants and coaches. And we help companies learn how to improve their work environments. So today we have a wonderful panel. My name is Shar Miller. Actually, I'll be your initial host today, joined by my esteemed colleagues here. But I'm a people strategist. I've worked in human resources over 25 years. Also a talent management strategist, predominantly in healthcare. And I've been super thrilled in the last 6 years to run and operate my own companies. And I've really enjoyed using these strategies and helping my employees achieve great things. So also I'm joined with several other people. Howard is here with us today, and he's a rewards and systems strategist, works with ComTeam out of New York, and just so thrilled to have Howard join us today. Also, Sumit Singla is with us today, and he joins us from India. And Sumit is just a phenomenal expert, has worked with many major organizations, and also provides some great expertise. Also, Jules is not joining us today. She's our moderator. So she'll be missed this week. Also, I'm just happy to have Wendy Graham is with us today. And Wendy is just a phenomenal expert in learning and development, and also helps with leadership coaching and organizational coaching, and also is a scuba instructor, master scuba instructor. So happy to have you, Wendy. Congratulations. And finally, I'd like to introduce Sam. Sam Reeve is actually the CEO and founder of ComTeam, and really it's ComTeam that sponsors these people strategy forums. So thank you for your leadership, Sam. It's been a fun ride.
Oh yeah, my pleasure.
Great. So I'm happy to introduce our guest speaker today. And he is John Vautier, and he is the vice president at Vautier Communications. Just an outstanding individual. Just met him, works with thousands of executives at all types of levels, and has a real solid perspective around executive presence or leadership presence. And so I'd love to hear what he has to share today. Obviously, you can see from his bio, he comes from the communications industry. So yes, today we're going to be talking about creating your executive presence. And I've always kind of wondered exactly what that means. I think over my career, I was always told, improve your executive presence. Like, so what is that? So welcome, John. I really can't wait to hear about you. Would you like to tell us about who you are and what your background is and what your expertise is all about, John?
Of course, Char. Thank you for having me first and foremost, and the rest of the panelists as well. I'm excited to be here. As Char said, John Vautier and Vice President of Sales for Vautier Communications. So my dad started the business back in 2004. It is a very small family business, but we work really across all industries, across all levels of organizations, coaching communication skills. Now, we target communication skills as opposed to presentation skills because we've seen a shift since we opened our doors in 2004. And people come to us and say, John, I'm not giving that many presentations anymore, or I don't present all that often in my role. Would a course like this or would coaching like this be for me? And my answer is, well, how often are you interacting or communicating with others? And it's always met with a smile, and people say, well, all the time. I do it socially, I do it professionally. I'm always communicating, speaking, interacting. And so as we think about communication skills, there are skills that make people effective, and they're learnable and teachable. And there are things that people do that they may not be aware of that unfortunately have them become maybe less effective or come across less effective when they speak. And I've always had this interest in executive presence. And it comes really from an interaction I had my junior year of college, Char. So I'm a junior in college. It's 2008. We're in one of a recession, and getting ready to try to find work outside of college was my big task at the time. So I went to interview with a company, and it was Whirlpool, the home appliance company. I get to the interview. It's a 2-day interview. It's a dinner at one night, and then the next day is a full day of interviews and having to give presentations and panels and everything else. So dinner the first night goes well, as expected. It's just interacting, networking, really seeing how people can interact socially before the professional setting takes place the following day. Following morning, I wake up at the hotel, shower, start to get ready, and I realize I go to my suit bag where I think I have my suit and everything ready to go for the day. I went to school in Bloomington Normal. So you can imagine in November in Bloomington Normal, it's winter already. I open my suit bag and I have my winter jacket in there. No suit, no tie, nothing else.
Oh, no.
So I think this is not a good start to my formal day of interviewing. And so I think to myself, is this even worth going through? I know that there was a requirement to have business professional, full suit, jacket, tie, the whole 9 yards. So I think to myself, I'll use this at the very least as good experience. And I put on my shirt and my slacks from the night before. That's what I had with me. And I show up to the interview, and I just made a very short comment to the hiring manager who was managing all of these panelists and these new hires coming on for the interview day. And I said, hey, I know I don't have business professional on, but I still want to be here and I still want to go through the whole process. And that was all I said about the entire thing. Went through the entire day of interacting with others, doing the presentation at the tail end of the day, going through all the panels and receiving questions, providing answers. Left to go back to Chicagoland, thinking probably didn't get the job because of my dress attire that didn't meet the criteria, but I figured this was good experience. 1 week later, I get the call from the hiring manager. Hey, John, we'd like to offer you a position to start with us when you finish after your senior year. And I thought, this is wonderful. Of course, I'd love to. And I asked, very frankly, I said, you realize I didn't have the criteria in terms of dress attire. And they said, we really didn't mind that. It was the way that you presented yourself and the speaking skills that really made us seem like you were going to be a good fit. And so I just thought it was very unique in that the executive presence that we have as individuals can be a key differentiator in terms of all things equal across the board everywhere else. But I found it very fascinating to see how people look at their executive presence and then how we frame growing or building, maybe fine tuning that skill set for others.
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely. I was thinking about the time I did my interview in my mother-in-law's dress because I was on vacation from Washington State here in Colorado, and I got this last minute interview, so it reminds me of that. But yeah, and I would also say I think today executive presence is probably very different than, like you said, years ago. You know, it's funny you talk about the stereotypical, Navy suit, And that goes for men and women, Navy suit interview, kind of, very sterile type of approach. But nowadays, more casual attire, diversity, all different aspects of what we look like is not all the same. And
Yeah.
and I love the fact that our world and society is being more open to differences in the workplace, right?
Absolutely. And I think so much has shifted even in the last decade that I've been doing coaching to see what now business casual looks like compared to business professional, and how different people go into the workplace. But that section or sector of executive presence is still critical. And I'll give a definition chart, because I know you asked the question, what is executive presence? And we find it fascinating to hear people ask us, what exactly is it? And I feel that if anyone's read the book by Sylvia Ann Hewlett, she wrote a book called Executive Presence. And I think she does a nice job. Before I share our definition, I'll share what she put out. And she says, executive presence is the it factor, a heady combination of confidence, poise, and authenticity that convinces the rest of us we are in the presence of someone who's going places. Executive presence is not just a measure of performance. Rather, executive presence is a measure of image, whether you signal to others that you have what it takes, that you are leadership material. And I just love the way that she frames that, because I do think it's one of those phrases or definitions that can be challenging to pinpoint. But I ask people all the time, and they constantly tell me, John, I know it when I see it and I hear it. So I know when speakers have executive presence based on what they're doing physically or what they're doing vocally. And then I know when speakers take the front of the room or I interact with others and they may not have that skill set built out yet, or they haven't developed it. And I love what I do because I can help develop that skill set. We pride ourselves in being able to bridge that gap and really give people or empower people to understand, what do I need to do to make myself more effective within that executive presence space?
Well, I think it's very valuable. I've heard of some of my executive colleagues literally spending thousands and thousands of dollars on like an executive coach that literally all your nonverbal cues, eye contact, not twirling your hair. I do that.
Yeah.
I worked on not doing that. So yeah, this is a very value added service that you provide. So do you
Yeah.
mainly work with executive teams, or do you work with, what size of companies do you typically work with? I mean, what's your ideal client typically?
Yeah, ideal client really falls within any category. I mean, we tend to work primarily Fortune 500, Fortune 200 companies, but it's not just executive level. So we do a lot of coaching now at the entry level stage, where new talent has come into the organization, and that organization has said, look, we want to invest within this new talent. We've made the priority to bring them on board. Now we want to build their skill set so that when they have interactions or exposure with senior leaders, boards of directors, other parts of the organization, they have the skill set or they have the capacity to speak well, show well, manage a room effectively. But again, it goes back to a lot of those tangible skills that allow us to come across in intangible ways. Let me explain what that means. In all of our programs, day number one of our courses, and they're typically falling in 2-day sessions, we ask the question, how would you like to be described from an audience? If you're interacting with people at an informal level or a formal level, how would you like to be described? And we're always getting people who raise a hand or jump in and say, John, I want to be engaging. I want to be confident. I'd like to come across knowledgeable, sincere, genuine, interesting, enthusiastic. Pick any of the positive words you could imagine. In all of our years doing this, we have yet to have an individual raise a hand or shout out, John, I want to be ineffective. I want to be boring. I want to be lame. I'd like to come across monotonous. No one is shooting for the negative space. But I always ask, let's reframe the question. If we were to say that Char or that Wendy came across as confident, or that Sam would be described as engaging, or Howard or Sumit would come across as knowledgeable or interesting, what might they be doing to make that happen? And this is where I hear crickets, and people say, well, John, I don't really know. I can't pinpoint exactly what they're doing that makes me feel the way I feel, but they're doing something that makes me feel like he or she is engaging, or they're coming across confident. And then it's really just knowing and bridging that gap to say, okay, if we know these intangible words exist, what are the tangible skills to make that happen? And so our definition, if you will, Char, of executive presence is very simple. It's what we see from a speaker and then what we hear from a speaker. So it's that speaker's physical skills or it's the speaker's vocal skills. Howard, you have a thought on this?
I was going to ask you, so where do you start when you first meet, a potential client?
In terms of asking questions on engaging with them?
Right.
Yeah, we typically
determining,
ask,
and determining, what is the right course of action, in working with them.
Yep, it's a great question. We typically ask, what are you currently doing within the talent development space?
Mhm.
How are you offering opportunities for your team members, your employees, your participants to develop their skills? And it's quite a bit, Howard, it's interpersonal skills. It's
Mhm.
their ability to show well or speak well in the workplace, but these skills we realize translate across into the personal world as well. And I love coaching speaking skills because it's never really going to go out of business, right? Even with
Sure.
technology advancing, our ability to be effective speaking when we're doing things virtually and remote is equally as important to today's world as it would be when we're on site, in person, face to face with people.
Mhm.
But it comes down to, are you doing anything in that space? And then what are some of the pain points that might exist within your organization in terms of people's ability to speak? Have you heard from members of certain business units, geez, we really don't like to get up and give talks because we get nervous or we don't exactly know the message. We don't know what to do with ourselves physically and vocally. And then from there, it's just making sure that they come to that conclusion themselves and saying, okay, this is an area of focus that we'd like to dial into. And then figuring out what's the correct course of action or what's the correct program offering that fits their needs.
Right.
Often, John, I mean, there's situations where, you're sitting around a team of leaders, and there's those people that speak a lot and those people that don't speak much, and sometimes you look across the table at those leaders and you wish that you're wondering what they're thinking, and what's going on in their head and so forth. I mean, there's some people that you coach that are not natural extroverts, that are more introverted and don't speak up as much. How do you address that?
Yeah, there certainly are, Sam. And introverts by nature have a voice, right? They have something they want to share. Usually they've got very interesting viewpoints. They've got important perspectives. It's encouraging them to be able, and I use that word encouraging or empowering them to be able to use their voice. They've got the skill set. They just have to figure out, how can I let this be unleashed? How can I let this get developed, if you will? Because introverts by nature, to your point, are probably not going to be the ones that go out of their way or volunteer to speak or share a point of view. They're more shy. They're a little bit more reserved in nature, which is fine. But again, some of those people have brilliant ideas, and many of them do, and you want to get those out of them. So it's just encouraging them. Look, I'd love to hear your opinion. What do you have to say about, or what do you feel about this area? What do you feel about this project, this new initiative? But it's sometimes the job of the leader to ask those open-ended questions to allow that introvert by nature to respond and give some depth. But if we go in and we only ask closed-ended questions, what we're typically going to get from them is very short, brief, yes, no, and then it runs into a brick wall again. And we don't get a lot of engagement. We don't get a lot of collaboration or interaction back.
And also, John, what comes up for me when I hear you say that is that possibly providing those questions ahead of time.
Yep.
So they kind of know what to prepare for. I find with folks that aren't, just in terms of the way they process and the ability to respond, gives them an opportunity to know what's coming so they can feel more prepared and willing to share a more in-depth answer.
Certainly. And I love that you said that, Wendy, because part of our program is knowing or understanding your audience. I think that's a key element in fostering effective communication skills, is knowing who your audience is. Because if you know you've got a group of individuals that you might be speaking to or interacting with, and they may be a bit more reserved, you have to give them time to maybe conceptualize or process certain questions or certain pieces of information before you get into those meetings or interactions to see what they may come back with. But if we don't know our audience, we're walking into a room and we're somewhat blind in that respect because we don't exactly know what we're going to either expect, or we don't know what we're walking into in terms of the people that we have in front of us. And again, I say in front of us, we can do it virtually or we can do it in person. In today's world, you see it happen in both areas.
Yeah, that's one other thing, as you mentioned, knowing your audience. I mean, in today's world, I mean, we're dealing with or especially executives are dealing with a multitude of different cultures and and locations and so forth. And Sumit, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, because I as an American, sometimes I go into a certain situation and perhaps I'm too bold and I end up sticking my foot in my mouth and not saying the right thing at the right time. So Samantha, and I know your experience is very global, and you see a lot of this happen. Is that a common problem you see with executives?
I think, I think you're right, Sam. And executive presence. So I've been into consulting for most of my life, or most of my working life rather. And I think appearance is the quick first tick in the box that contributes to executive presence, and people quickly tend to size up whether a person seems to be slouching or hunched over, or whether they're exuding confidence. And what's called owning the room when you walk in, or owning the stage when you walk in. I think that's that first impression is kind of hard to shake off, even if you're talking absolute sense and you're making some brilliant points. So it takes that extra effort to come up the curve. And I see a lot more of that in this part of the world, because we do tend to expect our leaders to be on some kind of a pedestal. So as a leader, if you're a little shaky, if you're a little nervous, you already are falling behind in the race to be seen as having some presence. And of course, the actual communication in terms of whether you're able to not only linguistically match up to the level of your audience. If you're talking to, say, 10th grade students versus if you're talking to a class of PhDs, you might have to tune your messaging accordingly. And I think it's also the tone that you take. So you don't want to come across as too flippant. You don't want to come across as too serious for your audience. And that's one of the aspects that I struggle with. So I'm never really sure, especially in a global kind of an audience, on what note should I be hitting. I mean, my natural style is to crack a joke or two, make sure it's not offensive, but it doesn't always work too well in, let's say, some parts of Asia where people feel you're just being not so serious, and you can put your executive presence under severe strain if you do that. So I'd love to hear what John has to say about this, or what advice you have.
Yeah, Sumit, I love that you mentioned that, because I do think knowing the audience and then reading the room is a key ingredient to success. Because like you said, if you crack the wrong joke, or you go in with maybe a different level of composure, if you will, what might start to happen is you lose credibility. And I know you brought it up, and I'm thankful you brought it up. A lot of us, we've been told since a very young age, you can't judge a book by its cover. But that's the world that we live in today. And so when we think about judging a book by its cover through the communication lens, we really feel when you get up in front of an audience, or get in front of a room, and it doesn't matter if it's a room of 3 to 5 people or 3,000 to 5,000 people, you've got probably between 30 seconds and 90 seconds in front of that audience before they are beginning to make their decision or come to their conclusion on what they see and hear from you. Which means, are they buying into what you are sharing with them physically and vocally? And I'll go back again to what I mentioned with Char around our executive presence definition. Physical skills would be 3 categories. It's eye contact, it's hand gestures, and then it's posture or body language. But those are the 3 ingredients, if you will, to our physical skill set in regards to executive presence. The vocal skills, 4 vocal skills. We've got volume, inflection, pace, and then lack of non-words. So lack of the ums, the ahs, the likes, the knows. As much as we hear those in today's language, we know that people are not using them on purpose. Nobody plans on saying, oh, today I'm going to drop in 100 non-words when I'm giving my talk. I think that'll be effective. So no one does it intentionally, but we wonder, and people always ask, well, John, how come some people have them or have a lot of them and others don't? It's simply knowing the skill set. You may or may not have noticed, I really don't use non-words. It's because I know what the skills are to keep them at bay. Everybody has the ability to learn and understand that there is a skill that keeps the non-words off the table. And we know we're at our best when we don't have an or an to start every thought or sentence or to finish every thought or sentence. But people say, well, John, I don't know what to do to get rid of them. And that's where getting a coach and really working with someone, either one-on-one or one to group, allows you to put those pieces together. And I use the analogy all the time. It's like a golf swing. If people have taken a golf lesson or a tennis lesson before with a golf pro or a tennis pro, usually they're very incremental changes that happen, and they can drive you nuts because they're small little iterations. And you think, how can this tiny little change make such a profound impact? And then that change happens and the profound impact takes place.
Yeah, I was thinking, and I can't remember the leader where she had to lower her voice. I don't know, Wendy, if you remember what I'm talking about, where females try to lower their voice so that they sound more credible, and actually practice doing that. Wendy, do you recall that person that had to do that kind of training? Margaret Thatcher or something like that? Anyway, but I just think it's pretty interesting how, just the tone of your voice, you can actually not sound very credible.
Yep. And there's of those 7 items, and I might share my screen here just because I think this is a good visual for anyone that's watching here. Executive presence, again, left-hand column, it's our physical skills, right-hand column, our vocal skills. And I'll say it out loud for the group that's on the listening aspect. But the physical skills would be the eye contact. Now, we look at eye contact as where are you looking when you're speaking? Not so important where you're looking when you're not talking. You'd like to be tuned in and focused to the group, whatever that might be. But when you're speaking, where are you looking? Because back to what Sumit said, if you take the front of the room and you open and you say, good morning, everyone, my name is John, and you're staring down at your shoes, immediately the audience is thinking, John's not coming across all that confident or all that engaging if he or she is not looking at us as an audience or us as decision makers. With hand gestures, we always get questioned. We get people who say, John, I got these 2 things hanging off my arms and I don't know what to do with them. So people bring up, if they've seen Talladega Nights and that Will Ferrell character, Ricky Bobby, brings his hand up like this. And he says, I don't know what to do with my hands. No one knows what to do with their hands, but there are skills that exist that allow your hands to look very natural, and they bring the message to life. They're effective, they're active, they get used to show different things or paint pictures. We would recognize when a speaker isn't using his or her hands well. And what tends to happen is it then impacts our posture. And you see speakers that constantly pace back and forth, or they rock back and forth, they rock forward and backwards, they bounce their knees, they tap their toes. All of these things to an audience look distracting or look nervous. You might be dying on the inside with nervousness, but if you don't show it to your audience, they don't know what they can't see or hear. So if they can't see it and they can't hear it, they really don't know it exists, which is why I always encourage people, when you start a talk, last thing you want to do is open your mouth and say, you'll have to bear with me, team, I'm incredibly nervous. Because immediately that audience is starting to look for and listen for, well, what are the nervous tells that are about to come from John?
You know what, John, I was thinking, I remember, when I was younger in my leadership days, and they'd always tell us to do the steeple thing with your hands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this.
I do.
And,
yeah. In our world, it's referred to as the power triangle. And
the power.
We tell people, keep the hands out of, we define that as the box, Char. So for those of us listening, the box would be south of the chin, north of our penalty kick position, and then inside the body. And so sometimes the box can be the hands inside together, like that prayer position, power triangle, whatever we want to call it. Other times people will cross their arms like this to give a talk. And it looks closed off. It looks a little bit more aggressive in nature. To Sumit's point, when you cross cultures, some of those body language cues can be an issue with credibility or an issue with people taking you seriously. And many of us may not think about that, but that's where we lean on the HR professionals like you, Char, and the global leaders like Sumit, who can tell us, hey, what are some of the cultural differences that I may not be aware of? And then how can I make sure I adjust my skill set to these differing audiences in different parts of the world?
Yeah, I mean, everything from how you shake someone's hand. I've also heard that if you're doing an interview, you shouldn't have your hands under the table, because it actually shows that there's distrust. It's like, you don't think about that. It's like, I mean, I do a lot of career coaching as well. And that's one of the things we talk about during interviews. But
Yep.
hey, Sumit, do you have some examples of nonverbal things that could be considered offensive in other cultures?
In fact, I actually have a question. That when people watch somebody talk, do they only focus on certain gestures? Like, I mean, Sumit in Denver could just be freezing, and therefore he's got his hands like this instead of being closed off. And I mean, I come from a tropical country where the temperature would be 100, 120. I saw on the screen you were sharing, it's about 67 there right now. So that's like fairly cold, right? So without appearing closed and without really having a checklist saying must not cross hands, must not look in that direction, how does one still maintain executive presence? And I mean, without really occupying 50% of your brain with, am I doing this the right way? Or am I making some kind of a mistake in terms of how I'm conveying my presence?
Right. And Sumit, it's really about getting out of your own way in regards to the skills. So for instance, we coach with posture and body language. Try to just keep open posture and open body language. This means keep your joints open. So rather than having your arms closed off like this and then in front of the body, which now creates a barrier between myself and my audience, that barrier can be perceived by many audiences as looking more closed off. And people say, geez, John doesn't come across as approachable as I would expect. And now all of a sudden that might impact an audience's ability to want to ask questions. And all of a sudden you finish your talk and you think, geez, I didn't get a lot of interaction out of that. And we will often pinpoint, well, it may be because of some of the nonverbals that you were using. What you were doing with your body was actually impacting the audience's ability to perceive you as approachable, as confident, as engaging, as collaborative. And so sometimes those things will impact other areas of that interaction. And maybe it's the audience's interaction with you, maybe it's the questions that you receive, or it goes back to that judging a book by its cover concept where you've spent the first 90 seconds opening your talk, your eye contact has been scanning, and scanning just means the eyes are darting. The eyes are going like this, and you're almost fire hosing your audience with information. So you're not really ever engaging with people in the room. Your eyes are just moving a mile a minute. When the eyes move quickly, our pace tends to increase. As our pace increases when we speak, it's more and more challenging for an audience to take in what we're sharing. They have trouble consuming that because it's coming at them so quickly. And you'll hear audiences say that was very overwhelming, or I got overwhelmed, I couldn't take in any more of the message, and they tune out. And Sumit, like you said, then all of a sudden you're starting a couple notches below where you'd like to, and now you're having to dig yourself out of a hole you put yourself in from the get-go. And of course, you can dig yourself out of said hole. We'd just rather not start there in the first place.
Another piece that John, that I'd like to bring up is now that we're operating in this remote environment, and how do we use this square that we're communicating through to really show our executive presence, in both physically, I mean, and so forth. I mean, physically, I mean, you're talking about being receptive and the box of the body and having an open position so that you feel approachable. But how do we do this through the computer screen?
Yeah, through the virtual lens, Sam, it's a great question, and it's something unique that's happened the last 2 years. To your point, we've been forced to be more present virtually. And so a lot of it is you have to realize when we do things virtually, we are at the mercy of the webcam, which means most of our skills, physical, are going to happen within the square of that webcam window pane. So those of you that are watching or tuned in, you notice that right now my head is cut off at the very top of where the webcam captures. Reason being, I don't need you, my audience, seeing what's above me on my wall behind me. So the audience wants to see as much of the speaker as possible. Now, this still gives me the ability to let my hands come to life, let them be active, let them get used within reason. From an eye contact perspective, we know our audience sees us looking at them when we look at the webcam lens. So those of us that are on a laptop, it's the little white or green dot on top of the laptop. Those of us that have maybe a desktop setup at home and we've got a standalone webcam, then it's going to be looking at the webcam lens. Sam, for the better part of 2 years, I have encouraged people when they're doing things virtually, get a bright colored sticky note, pin it to the back side of your webcam lens, and all I have written on mine is look here. That way I know when I'm doing things virtually, I know where I should be looking when I'm talking.
I like that.
Audiences can't see it, but it's a very simple little cheat code, if you will, to make sure that we don't get stuck. And I'm going to demonstrate what I mean here, looking at people's thumbnails. And so all of a sudden, if I'm over here on the right-hand side and I'm looking at Wendy's thumbnail or Howard's thumbnail or Char's or Sumit's thumbnail, where does the audience see me looking? They see me looking down right. And all of a sudden, this now looks disengaging because as I'm speaking, I'm not looking at my audience or my decision makers. I'm actually looking away from them. So it's small little iterations. But again, when we think about this through that virtual lens, this is how we are perceived when we do things on Zoom, on WebEx, and on Teams. And we've got a lot of clients who are engaging with us now to say, hey, John, we'd love to have coaching around this virtual skill set because now parts of the business have shifted and they're not doing much in person. Maybe their roles entirely have shifted to this remote place, but they're on Teams and WebEx and Zoom meetings all day long. And of course, they want to be at their best or really fine tune that skill set. From an executive presence standpoint, just because we're behind a screen, the executive presence skills don't disappear. They're still important. They're now just important through another lens.
Yeah, very good. And so Sumit, I'm sorry, just noticed that you were off mute and you had something to say there.
In fact, I had a question for John. John, would you also say that executive presence rules are different for men and women? Is there a gender specific guideline to executive presence as well, or would you say it's largely the same?
I would say it's largely the same, Sumit. I don't see a ton of difference between males and females in terms of the skills. Eye contact, you still want to look at decision makers and then make sure you're being focused is what we call it, rather than scanning. With the hand gestures, I always encourage hand gestures should look natural for you. Now, the beauty of the executive presence skills is we can all have executive presence skills and they may all look a little different. So our goal is not to create a carbon copy robot of people and say, okay, you have to do exactly what I'm doing in front of the room in order to be effective. My skills look different than my twin sister, Jen, and our other coach. And again, it's just different personalities, different styles, but the skills themselves are still there. In terms of vocal skills, biggest thing I notice is most speakers, and this goes for males and females, feel like they are speaking loud enough when in reality, it's a great one-on-one volume. It doesn't necessarily hold vocal presence or vocal weight in a group setting. So all of a sudden they're talking and they're being perceived at a much lower volume than they probably could have. And many people say, well, John, I don't want to shout. The reason we tend to hear ourselves much louder than our audience is because our mouth is here and our ears are here. They're very close in proximity to one another. So we start to talk and we think, oh my goodness, I think I'm coming across too loud. And I'm often coaching people, bring that volume up. You sound more confident, more engaging. It's not shouting at an audience, but having a higher level of volume will allow for more inflection. And Char, I know you mentioned that inflection piece about some individuals, males and females alike, making sure they bring their volume down at certain points, making sure they emphasize certain points, but having those ups and downs or peaks and valleys really allows your audience to recognize what's most important from John's message. Because otherwise everything comes across in one level. And that's where we get people that say it sounded a bit monotone. I couldn't tell what was important and what wasn't. Wendy, you had a comment?
Yeah, this came up because this is something you and I have talked about in the past when we were, offering your courses to some of, to some of our employees. And one of the things that I think is, so this just sparked for me is that when we were in the open office environment, here's all these people and you have to talk like really quietly because everybody else is on the phone. How do you actually get to have those peaks and valleys when you're not using your diaphragm, you're not using your voice, to be able to project? And remember talking to you about that. And so now more people are at home, possibly, have an office with a door, maybe they're sharing with someone else. I know some people are, but yeah. I'm curious how that, has changed for people coming from an open office environment to actually having your own space to be able to project. So that just popped in for me, thinking about the whole change with this new hybrid and work from home and work remote scenario.
Yep. And so it's, Wendy, more of a different approach to what that 7 or 8 level volume sounds like. And so for those listening, we use a very simple marking system between 1 being a whisper and then 10 being a shout. Most people know the 2 extremes are not likely to be used unless you have to do it. And Wendy, to your point, you're in a cubicle type setting or you've got that open forum and you know there's a bunch of people on headsets or on calls otherwise, and you've got to bring in that very soft, quiet approach. And that's intentional. And you're not going to give your entire talk that way, but that's on purpose. And you're doing it because you have said to yourself or decided based on the situation, you know what, I have to. But most of us, we want to sit in that 7 or 8 level. So it's south of our 10. It's not a shout, it's not yelling, but it's north of our 1-to-1 volume. And most people's 1-to-1 volume is about a 5 or 6. So if it were just you and I talking here, Wendy, I would probably be at a 5 or 6, but we've got a group setting. And so my volume is just a little bit higher. Now, my 7 or 8 volume today from my home office sounds much different than what it did last week when I was in Appleton, Wisconsin with a group of 12 in more of an auditorium setting. So it's just looking at that 7 or 8 level through a different lens, depending on where we are at in space, or if we're doing things remote and virtual, or we're doing things on site in person.
So I know we were talking a lot about the mechanics of executive presence, such as the posture, and the voice and so forth. But the other piece is knowing when to say something and knowing when not to. We were talking about reading the audience and so forth. How can we build these skills?
Yeah, building the engagement, Sam, is actually fun. And as we think about building engagement, if you want interaction from your audience, that's your goal or your responsibility, I should say. If your goal is to get interaction, your responsibility as the speaker is to allow the audience to share. And what I mean by that is ask open-ended questions that allow people to get their voice out. The key is we have to do it early and often. Because if we go through and you think you're in an hour-long meeting and the first 52 minutes you've been talking, you've given nobody else a chance to share anything. By minute 52, if you open the floor and you say, okay, team, what questions do we have? You may not get much interaction at that point because the audience has now felt as though this is not a situation where I'm really looking to be interactive or I'm looking to share because Sam or John hasn't given me a chance to do so. So if we want, we can read our audience and we can make sure, okay, I want interaction, I want engagement today. I'm going to make sure I ask, team, someone share your thoughts on this new initiative. Or I'd love to hear, Sumit, your perspective on this new project rollout. Char, can you tell us a little bit more about what you feel in regards to this new scope of work that we're looking into? But asking them and framing them open-ended and then letting those individuals share their feedback, that's what usually builds a lot more of that collaboration. And Sam, it's funny, a lot of our audiences are communicating with us when we're talking to them. They're just doing it non-verbally. And so we get the head nodding, we get the smiles, we get some of those non-verbal cues that allow us as a speaker to realize, okay, I'm on the right track, or I might get a very flat facial affect from somebody. Or I see someone that shakes their head and maybe tells me non-verbally, again, they're not tracking with my message, or I need to go back and maybe clarify something. This goes back to knowing when you're speaking, are you looking at your audience? If not, you're not going to see those nonverbal cues. You're going to miss a lot of those signals that they are sharing with us because you're too busy talking back to your slides or looking down at the floor or staring up at the ceiling. So a lot of what we feel from an interaction standpoint from an audience, they're sharing with us. They're just doing it non-verbally.
Mm-hmm. I this is bringing some thoughts to my mind during my career. I started with a healthcare system in year 2000. I was with a healthcare system for 13 years. And when I first started there, I think I got so much coaching about my executive presence that, one, I was wearing all the, the colored suits with the, the black slacks, black shirt, colored jacket, right?
Yep.
I'd walk around the hallways of the hospital like a little robot. And I'd stand in front of the, executives and the leaders and talk very political jargon, very corporate jargon. You talk about the strategicness, da, 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 da. And what was interesting is that my nursing leaders, towards the end of my career at this particular healthcare system, said I transformed because when I first started with that company, I seemed so corporatized. And I think I was focused so much on my executive presence that I actually was kind of plastic in a way.
Yeah.
And then when I got towards the end of those 13 years, I had many nursing leaders say, you know what, Shar, you seem more real now. I mean, it's like you're more authentic, you seem to really understand the front line better. And we find that you used to be so corporatized, but now you seem more authentic and real. So John, my question for you is, do you think that sometimes you can go overboard with coming across too plastic or too corporate? And really
You
that can
can.
be kind of a turnoff, particularly to a frontline employee, that, you know, because they used to call the executives the suits. Oh, the suits are walking through. And
Yep.
it was kind of more derogatory. Oh, you're a suit.
Yeah.
So what's your
It
thoughts
can
on
be.
that?
Yeah, it's a great comment. It can be looked at as negative. And Char, one of our goals when we coach any program, any client, any part of the organization, we want people to start the program and leave the program authentic, genuine, and sincere. We
Right.
want you to give yourself room to be yourself, but it's being yourself with a polished set of skills. And so again, it goes back to, I'm not looking to make carbon copy robots out of people, because to me, I don't think that feels authentic and genuine. And I'll go back to the golf swing analogy. We see on the pro tour and in the amateur level, a lot of different golf swings. They're all effective in their own way. And as much as people may say, well, I really want a golf swing that's exactly like Tiger Woods or exactly like the greats of the golf game, trying to do it exactly like someone else is a fool's errand, because that's not you. You want to be yourself. You want to be authentic. You want to be genuine, and giving yourself room to understand that, hey, I can still be myself, and I can still be genuine, sincere, and authentic. And I can do so with a good set of eye contact, with effective hand gestures, with purposeful posture, with effective levels of my vocal skills, pacing my rate of speech, if you will, making sure I give myself permission to pause, so I'm not filling in a whole bunch of ums and ahs as I'm talking. But we can do all those things and we can make them our own. And that's what allows us to bring that level down, so we aren't feeling, as you said, so plastic. Or we stand there, and those of you that are watching on video, it's thinking about rubbing my chest and rubbing my head at the same time. And it drives people crazy. And they say, John, I can't do all of this at once. And so we encourage, look, pick the low hanging fruit, focus on what you feel would have the biggest impact on your audience. Start to fine tune that skill set first. You can always then add into, once you say, okay, I'm comfortable with the eye contact. Now let's begin working more with the hands. Or, okay, my hands feel comfortable now. Let's start dialing in posture. My vocal energy feels good. I just want to make sure I'm minimizing the non-words. But taking bite-sized pieces to the skills gives a lot more ease to allow those skills to start to develop and absorb.
Something that popped up for me about that, listening to Shar talk about, you know, feeling that she needed to dress a certain way and be a certain way and, you know, embody this role of a corporate suit, what that came up for me is an interesting insight I gained about myself in using our tool, our TMA tool that we use. So John, we use, you know, there's all kinds of tools out there, Myers-Briggs and, you know, predictive index and other tools that assess people's, their talents and their passions. And one of the factors that we evaluate is on this informal to formal scale. And so some people are genetically predispositioned and with their experience of their life, you know, to be more formal or to be more informal. And so I think that's really exactly what you're saying. It just, you know, so that was really helpful for me to find out where I am on that scale of being, I'm a bit more formal. So I like to wear the suit, you know, I liked working on Wall Street with the suits, okay, you know, at the beginning of my career, and I enjoyed that. But for someone who's more informal, because it really even comes down to how you dress. The fact that what you're saying is so true, that you want to find your level of authenticity and not try to be that other thing that isn't you. And so I would love to, you know, if anybody is interested to find out where they are on this scale, we could use a tool like TMA, and I'd be glad to, you know, have a one-on-one with anyone who wants to do, to take our assessment and have a one-on-one to learn where they are. Because once you identify, you know, actually I'm a more informal person, that might help you own your executive presence as a bit more of an informal, type of leader, and not have to put on the suit and be that robot that Shar was talking about, if that's not your genuine talent and passion. That's not really how you show up naturally. So I just loved what she shared. And then what you said about that. Yeah, this is not about being, that there's not like a cookie cutter model. This is about finding your individual unique presence.
Yep. And I love that you mentioned the spectrum, because I think we always coach from a spectrum level. We like to say our skills, our executive presence skills, can work across that spectrum of formality. There are times in our lives, especially outside of the workplace, where we want to be using these skills, but we're using them on a very informal level. We're interacting with spouses, with kids, with family members, with friends. And then we get into more of a corporate setting, and you hear people say, well, John, how do I dial these skills up when the lights are on, when it's a little bit more high stakes, so to speak? And it's just knowing what the skills are, and then I can play up that spectrum or I can play down that spectrum, but it's still me doing it at the end of the day. It's still my own genuine perspective or my own genuine style or my own authenticity that exists. And it's not feeling the need to be somebody that we aren't. And so I love that the TMA tool sounds fantastic. And I think I hear from a lot of people, Wendy, I smile as you said that, because I hear people say all the time, John, I don't know what I don't know. So what is there that I may not be aware of that you can help me better understand? And that's part of why I love doing what I do in terms of coaching communication skills. Sometimes I'll get people who say, John, I've been through a formal coaching before, or I've had a presentation skills class or course in my career at points. Or I'll have people that say, I've never been through anything like this. I'm an open book. I want to be a sponge. I want to learn as much as I can, because there may be some things I could not even be aware of that will allow me to be more effective when I interact with others.
Great. Well, I know we're closely approaching the top of the hour, so I do want to acknowledge our next week's speaker before we take some additional questions here. So next week we're going to be listening to Chance Eaton. He's going to be talking about leading self, and so I'm really excited about hearing his going through that discussion on how to take more control over our lives, and how do we lead ourselves through to success. And so join us next week on the People Strategy Forum to listen to Chance Eaton, our guest there. All right, so back to you, John. So Sumit, do you have a question or for John?
Not a question really. It's a funny anecdote that comes to mind. I don't know if you've seen this Trevor Noah video where he does a sketch of Barack Obama meeting Nelson Mandela. And so it's hilarious, and it talks about inflection and tone and a lot of things we spoke about, where Mandela's kind of coaching him to take his pitch down a couple of notches, speak slower, and they're basically practicing yes we can and figuring out how to be successful. I mean, it just struck me that a lot of concepts that John's spoken about, they kind of come through in that little video.
That's great, Sumit. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. So John, how do people get a hold of you? Do you have a website? Do you have an email? And what's the best way if somebody would like your expertise in helping them with their executive presence or leadership?
Yeah, anyone interested in reaching out, we do have a website. So it's vautiercommunications.com. And I'm going to put in my email address in the chat box now. It's very simple for everybody. John J, JOHNJ @vautiercommunications.com. We're very active, Char, on LinkedIn, my personal page, John Vautier, and then our company page, Vautier Communications. We have a newsletter, we do podcast series. So we try to do as much content as possible around effective communication. And again, it works across all areas of life. I mentioned to start, and I'll mention it again to close. Doing what we do, people will always want to be effective communicators. It doesn't matter the role that you're in. When we think about the ability to speak well socially or personally, and we think about the success that people have when they can communicate effectively in professional settings, it's a skill set everybody would love to fine tune. And it's just a skill set that is learnable and teachable for all levels. It's just a matter of knowing and understanding where could my strengths be developed, or where could some of my gaps be filled in terms of what I'm doing physically and vocally, or my message, my delivery options. I'm happy to talk with anybody and everybody, and I could talk for hours and hours and hours about the importance of communication skills. But I would encourage you, reach out to me by email or reach out to our website, and you'll find a wealth of information and knowledge regarding what we do and how you might be able to engage with us.
And so you're based out of Colorado, but I assume you offer this virtually all over the world, perhaps?
We do, yeah. We have a lot of global presence with our clients virtually in different parts of the world. US-based companies that might have global divisions outside of the US, and we do a lot of virtual coaching with them. I've traveled globally and done coaching on site in person across the globe. Last 2 years, a lot of our business has been through the virtual landscape only because of the pandemic and everything else. But we are starting to get back on site, back in front of people. Home base for me now is Denver, Colorado, but as consultants, we travel where the clients are. And so we do things on site with organizations or individuals. And then we also offer public programs. So those of us who are local here in the States, we do have an open enrollment public program coming up. It's going to be October 18th and October 19th of this year, and that's going to be in Columbus, Ohio. So for anyone interested, you're welcome to reach out for more information. More information is on our website. If you want to reach out by email, I'm happy to share logistics and timing and what the program outline looks like, everything else. But it's a 2-day course offered coming up in October. Again, 18 and 19 of this year. And that's going to be based in Columbus, Ohio.
Perfect. Well, that's an awesome opportunity. Yeah, Wendy?
I wanted to just speak as someone who's gone through John's programs. Just a little anecdote, which is that, first of all, the programs themselves are so, I'm going to say, kind of revolutionary. Like the way that they take you, it's almost like a magic show. Like the way they get you to change your habits, almost instantly on the spot, is pretty incredible. But what was coming to mind is that I sort of have like John on my shoulder whenever I'm speaking, whatever the scenario is, whether it's I'm teaching a dance class or, on a forum, or, we've been doing so much over Zoom or in person. It really is amazing. The things that I learned in that class do play out in every interaction, every communication that I have. I hear him on my shoulder, like saying, if somebody asks a question, I learned in your class, you really don't say, that's a good question. And it's just this little thing that it's a little thing that I still remember all these years later. And so I guess I just wanted to add that testimonial that, this is really something different. And so if you have even if you're an experienced presenter, I feel comfortable talking to people, but I got so many little tips that it's a fine tune. It's taking it from hot to boiling, and so I just wanted to add that these things have carried through with me across all communication. So
thank you, Wendy. I appreciate that. And we pride ourselves in that learning by doing model. And because of that, you get raving fans like Wendy who remember, in going through a course where it's a lecture for 2 days, in some cases could be effective. That's not our style. We are very much learning by doing. We want it to be immersive. We want you to get repetitions, but we feel that the best way to learn a skill set is by going through and doing that skill set. And the more repetitions you get with things that will otherwise feel a bit uncomfortable, the more comfortable you get repetition after repetition. And so, Wendy, we appreciate you sharing that testimonial with the group, and I will always cherish the program that we had and the time that we had together working in previous careers.
Yeah, you didn't know you were sitting on her shoulder, did you?
I did not, no, but I love to hear things like that.
Well, thanks, John. This has been a really engaging conversation. I loved it, learned a lot, and I'm going to put it to use. So thank you so much for your time today.
Good, Sam, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on, and I'm happy to be a part of the comp team panelist and speaker series going forward, should you see fit. So please continue to reach out.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for joining in this week's People Strategy Forum, and we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Bye.
Cheers,
Thanks,
everyone.
Wendy. Bye,
Thank
Howard.
you.
Bye, Sumit. Bye, Char.
Bye.